ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Delusions of Grandeur. I'm your host, David Streggy, and here in the room with me, I have Boris, who comes all the way from Croatia. Hello, Boris.
Hello, David.
How are you doing today?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing okay. So last week we went on about a film called The Fair, which was partially like in black and white and partially in color, and it made me think of another film. And it was a film that you had said that you had never watched. So I figured,
Uh,
what the hell? It's kind of similar. The film that we're going to go on about is called Pleasantville, and it's directed by Gary Ross. And it was filmed in 1998. And it stars William H. Macy, Joan Allen, uh, Toby Maguire, Jeff Daniels, and yeah, there are quite a few characters here. Natalie Ramsey is
uh, yeah.
the name of the girl that played Mary Sue. But yeah. What were your? Let me just read a IMDb synopsis of this film, and then we shall go into first impressions.
Okay.
So two 1990s teenage siblings find themselves in a 1950s sitcom where their influence begins to profoundly change that complicated world.
Indeed.
so yeah, so evidently we have a character by the name of Dave, played by Toby Maguire, and
Yeah.
we also have another character that plays his sibling.
Yes, Jennifer.
Correct.
Mm,
So Jennifer is actually played by Reese Witherspoon,
yeah, yeah.
and they don't entirely get along in the very beginning, and she's wanting to go on this like date that she set up with like the high school jock.
Uh, yes, that's one very interesting detail that actually got my attention today while I was watching this movie. So, at the very beginning, we see this character difference between David and Jennifer. David is. As people like to say, a nerd, an introvert, someone who lives in his own world with things he likes. In this particular case, with this sitcom Pleasantville, while Jennifer is more like a normal girl, well, what people like to call normal. She is all about going on dates and things like that. And
Things
yet,
that a teenage girl would do.
uh, yeah, and yet when they enter this other world that we are probably going to bring up soon, they actually at the beginning start the opposite of what they were doing in their own world.
And
Uh,
spoiler alert, because we are probably going to spoil the shit out of this movie.
oh yeah, that much is true.
so, what was your thoughts about the film as a whole before we start into talking about different characters? By the way, this is actually the last time you ever get to see Don Knotts in any kind of a role.
Oh, I didn't know.
He died not too long after this movie. So,
Oh,
and
oh, that.
I believe Paul Walker, or is it Paul Walker?
I don't know. Today was the first time I watched the movie. I haven't done research on the cast and crew and so on yet.
Let's see. I believe that one of the kids that well, anyways, we'll get into that eventually. Um, what did you think about the film as a whole? Did you was this a first time for you?
Yes, today was the first time I watched the movie, and my impressions were very positive because this movie deals a lot with a topic that I often find myself thinking about and sometimes discussing with other people. Like, I really like this movie's metaphorical portrayal of the absurdity of people's tendency to repress their own nature in order to blend in with the society. Uh, that's something I, like I said, often find myself thinking
Well,
about, and
I believe that this is a very good film about race and racism. Um,
uh,
in effect, in actuality, too, in a sense. But we'll get into that later.
well, racism is way we can interpret this movie like as the black and white people in the Pleasantville world, as they are apparently afraid of the colored people and they hate them and so on. It can be interpreted as a metaphorical portrayal of racism, as you said, or it could also be portraying homophobia or things like that.
Anything that could be different than what is considered to be normal. But before we get into those topics of this film, let's just do a run play of how these two characters end up in the world of Pleasantville.
Uh, y- yeah,
So, as I said, Don Knotts does his last portrayal of any kind of a character, and he ends up being this character that is kind of kooky, uh, but uh, evidently Jennifer and Dave's mother are is planning on going away for the weekend,
yeah.
and
Uh,
Dave has a contest that he's going to try to win that has something to do with winning $1,000.
yeah, and if I remember correctly, it was something like a quiz about the Pleasantville show, right?
Correct. And Pleasantville just so happens to be a 1950s like show, kind of like Leave It to Beaver.
Uh, yeah.
Ish, which it really makes me think and wonder if they were really trying to portray that particular show in a sense.
Well,
Uh,
I cannot say for certain as I didn't watch that show, but
well, I did from time to time. The show would end up on a television channel called TV Land. That's over here in the states. I know it's a little different where you live. How you get to watch what. you're allowed to watch.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure if I have even had an opportunity to watch that show. I don't know if it was ever aired on TV in my country. Maybe you can later give me the IMDb link of it, and I can see if there is a Croatian title, and if I can maybe find it somewhere. Then maybe I'll know if it was ever on TV in my country.
Not sure. I know. I know it was a positive show. It was black and white, and the family was was like real happy, like they were in here. But anyways, so what happens is Jennifer and Dave have a fight and break their TV remote just
Yeah.
about the time that um, the Pleasantville Marathon is supposed to go on, and around the time that um, Jennifer has set up her date. And lo and behold, uh, Don Knotts shows up on their doorstep unannounced. And as he's talking to Dave about the Pleasantville show, he realizes that he is very knowledgeable about the show. So instead of giving them a regular remote, he's got this special remote that he gives them, and they fight over it. And in the process of fighting, Jennifer accidentally pushes a button, and they both end up materializing as the son and daughter on this Pleasantville TV show.
Yeah, they apparently they take over the places of two characters that had already existed on the show. A girl named Mary Sue and a boy named Bud. And apparently these other characters on the show they don't see that Bud and Mary Sue now have different faces. They don't see anything unusual at first.
Well, no, they think that they are Bud and Mary Sue, but we see them
Yeah.
as Dave and Jennifer.
Uh, yeah, and that's the way they see themselves. Uh, and they realized they ended up physically in this universe where the story of the show takes place
And right
in.
away, they want to go back, but they have an argument with the Don Knotts character, and he gets so upset that he says he's going to leave them there for a week.
Well,
So,
yeah, I must admit, at that point I was a bit surprised by Dave's reaction because Dave was so into the show and suddenly he found himself inside it, and instead of wanting to use this opportunity to explore that universe in real life, he just wants to go home right away. That was something I didn't expect.
neither did I. I mean, of course, when you're so used to the real world, living your real life, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you want to go back to it if that's where you came from? Because, to me, I think that everyone would be afraid to take that next step if they were given the opportunity.
Oh, well, I don't know. Maybe I would
I
want to
mean,
go back.
would you necessarily be happy if suddenly you were watching your favorite show and suddenly you got sucked into it and you were part of it?
Well, maybe I would want to go back, but not right away. I would want to spend some time there before going back.
What is your favorite TV show if you had one?
Oh, well, I have several, but I would say my recently favorite one would be Lucifer with Tom Ellis. I think you said you watched that show too,
Yep,
right?
I did. It was definitely a decent show. Now, what if you got sucked into the world of Lucifer as one
Ooh.
of the as one of the characters? Would you necessarily want to stay in that land of television?
Well, maybe it would depend on which character I become.
True, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, if suddenly you got zapped into it, what would you do? Would you necessarily be like, "Yay! Now I can do what I want," or would you be like, "Wait a minute, where the fuck am I? I'm not home. How am I gonna get back?"
Well, yes, at first I would be shocked, yeah, but then, well, good question. I mean, I can only speculate how I would react in a situation I've never found myself in, but I don't know. At first, I would definitely be shocked, but yeah, I
So,
don't know if I would.
so we know that this world of Pleasantville is all in black and white, and everything that happens in the show is predestined
Uh,
because it's already been on. It's supposedly this older show, and like Dave said, that they were all reruns. As so, what while they have been sucked into this world, every single episode has been pre-planned.
Yeah, there is a lot of interesting stuff to mention about this. Like at the beginning, we assumed the show is black and white simply and only because it's supposedly an old show, but then we find out there is much more to that. And also like for example, as we find out, there is no sex on the show, probably because maybe it was intended to be a child friendly show or something. So supposedly the audience never sees the characters on the show
Well,
have sex, but
there
yes.
are there are many things that the people in Pleasantville do not know about that Jennifer and Dave do,
uh,
and um, like the first thing you already realize is evidently the mother of the kids, played by Joan, um, I believe Joan Allen, who plays Betty.
Yes.
Um, she evidently bakes a lot of things. Did you
Indeed.
notice how many waffles and pancakes were and bacon and ham steaks were sitting on that table?
Yeah, I must say I was surprised to see like pancakes on the same plate with ham and things like that. I mean,
And
aren't p-
Betty is dressed up like one of those Betty Crocker women that you might have seen on like some of those older commercials that showed that mother who cooks at home kind of thing from the
indeed.
1950s.
Yeah, yeah. uh, So, one very interesting thing, particularly with this character Betty you mentioned, is that she is the one that lets us know that the people of Pleasantville don't know what sex is. Like that's something pretty unique about this whole story, because when we watch a show, even if there is no sex on the show, we assume that the characters on the show do know what sex is, because how else would they be making children and stuff? But then in this movie, we find out that the TV show characters do not even know about any concept that the audience doesn't see on the show, like sex, for
Well,
example.
they don't know about sex. They don't know about the different books that are in their library. The firemen
Uh,
only rescue cats.
yes, they don't know what fire is.
uh, they don't know that there is anything beyond Pleasantville. Um, they don't know what's beyond Elm Street.
Yeah, yeah, that made me wonder when they mentioned Elm Street. Was that
Yeah,
a
when they
reference to?
because when they went to school, they were being taught about how small the town is.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, there is a scene when Jennifer enters a bathroom and there is no toilet seat there, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
So there are definitely some different things that happen here, and the thing is, once it's actually Jennifer who starts to change a little bit of everything because she can't get used to how everything is predestined. Everything is got routine,
y-
whereas Dave, on the other hand, realizes that uh, if you upset one thing in the balance of this universe, it could change everything.
Uh, yeah, that's one very interesting thing I wanted to point out earlier. Like, I felt that was a point when David and Jennifer kind of reversed their roles, because in their own world, Jennifer was a person who kind of fit in with the society, while David was more like an outcast, like living in his own world and stuff. And here they do the opposite when they find themselves in Pleasantville. Like David is the one who wants to keep things normal for the universe they found themselves in, while Jennifer wants to do her own thing, which is, like I said, the opposite of what they were doing in their own world.
Well, and she starts adapting to the world now that she's part of it. So what she does is evidently Skip, who is a character in the town of Pleasantville that likes her. Originally in the show, he asks her out and gives her his pin. Well, they do a little bit more than pinning, don't they?
Yeah. So at first, due to Jennifer not really knowing Skip, she and Dave try to avoid that date between Jennifer and Skip happening, but then they do go out together after all. But yeah, it ends differently from the way it was expected. Yeah, supposedly on the original show, Mary Sue and Skip didn't end up having sex, and that's what happened here with this new Mary Sue.
Well, and one of the things I noticed is when he told her that when he told Skip, when Bud told Skip that
Yes.
she may not want to go out with him. That's when he threw the basketball and it didn't fall in the hoop like normal. It upset the balance.
Oh yeah, yeah. Uh, Indeed, and if I remember correctly, at that point, David decided not to try to prevent that date from happening, right?
Correct.
Uh,
Next is when we see that Bud, who is Dave, is late for work.
oh yeah, and
So where does he work?
uh, he works with this guy Bill, played by Jeff Daniels. Now, their sh- uh, their shop. What were they originally? Oh yeah, they were making hamburgers, right?
Yep, making hamburgers, and I think that's about it.
Uh, yeah,
Because
but
that's all
then
they might have
later,
known.
uh, yeah, at that point at
And he
least.
didn't and he didn't know what to do since he hadn't shown up to work. So he kept wiping down the counters.
Yeah, that was another moment that seemed kind of bizarre at first when Bill complains about having to do some things on his own that Bud normally does, but we as viewers see that those are some random things that everyone can do that shouldn't really be a problem. But here we see Bill complaining about having to do some simple
He
things
com-
on
he,
his own.
he complains, but he's also complaining about it in wonderment because he'd never had to do that before. It was something different in the routine, and he was noticing it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's when we kind of begin to see what the movie is going to be about, like people being afraid of changes and of different things.
Well, yeah, I think right after um, on his way back from Lover's Lane, Skip sees a rose in a bush,
Uh,
and
yeah, and
and
it,
it's red.
yeah, it's the first thing in Pleasantville that appears colored.
So the next couple of things that happen is Skip comes to the basketball court, and he begins to tell the other guys about his night with Jennifer,
Yeah.
and so that distracts all of the guys so much that they miss the hoop.
Yeah, so that's the point where Pleasantville discovers the concept of sex, if I remember correctly, right?
Well, those guys start realizing that they can do more things than just sit at Lover's Lane.
Yeah.
um, and then, of course, um, apparently the mother, Betty, she
uh,
is sitting with some of her ladies playing bridge,
yes.
and they're talking about how different things are beginning to turn color, and she notices that her cards are in color.
Yeah, so throughout the movie, as more and more things and people become colored, we realize it happens because of people getting in touch with their own nature, with what they really want to do deep down, but haven't been doing before, because they were just following what they had to do.
Hmm. Which is a real interesting way of presenting things in a sense of this town that was kind of asleep to everything that was bad and good at the same time.
Uh,
I mean, there were some things that, like uh, Betty, his mother, did not know about sex, and that's something that
uh,
Jennifer told her about. And she said
yeah, that was
she said that George would never do that with her.
yeah, which kind of makes us wonder how their children came to exist in the first place.
Right, but Jennifer tells her about a way that she can do something without, so she makes herself come, and a tree starts on fire because of it. So Bud or Dave goes over to the fire station and tries to tell them that there is a fire going, and they don't realize to come. So he tells them cat because that's the
Yeah,
only
that's
thing that they know.
uh, yeah. In spite of the word fire being
A
a part of
fireman's lingo.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so Dave mentions cats, and that's what makes them go there to apparently save the cat. And then even when they see the fire, they don't know what to do until Dave shows them how to deal with the fire.
And after that, a lot of the town's teenagers show up at his place of work, wondering how he knew how to put out the fire. And evidently, um, once Jennifer had actually started to um, talk about what some of the books are about,
Uh,
words had started to appear on the pages of these books.
yeah, well, at least the words she read back in her own world.
So, um, as things progress, people start to change a little bit. A bit. People start to seem to be a little bit more happy. Even seems to be more furniture in the furniture store
Oh,
in town.
I didn't notice that detail with the furniture.
Yeah, they showed the storefront with the big bed. Well,
Oh,
they've never had a big bed like that in town. So when William H Macy and his and that character that happened to be the mayor, we're talking about the big bed.
oh, yeah.
They were talking about it like it was taboo or something like that. That evidently someone's wife actually wanted to go get one of those big beds.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was also mentioned later. I remember now. I'm sorry once again. Well, I told you before, but our viewers may not have heard it if they didn't watch our previous discussions. But yeah, when I have seen a movie only once, I usually tend to forget some details until I have seen it at least once more. So.
That's fine. I've seen the movie several times, so I I really like this film. It's one of my favorite films. I would have to say one of the more mainstream. Although, even though it was mainstream, I believe it was also independent too, which is um, what the whole big buzz about this film was at the time that it came out, and it was filmed in 1990. 8.
Oh,
So
Uh, yeah, well, like I said before, I really liked the message of this movie and the way the whole thing was portrayed. Like, to us as the audience, it's very obvious that a colored TV show or a colored anything is usually better than the same thing in black and white. Yet,
I I actually like black and white over color, to be honest, myself.
oh wow.
I prefer things to be in black and white if it can be myself.
Oh,
Maybe
interesting.
maybe because I liked watching the old monster movies uh,
Oh,
from Universal in black and white, and um, I watched the original Dark Shadows in black and white. Um,
oh, I understand.
Twilight Zone, the original Twilight Zone was in black and white.
Oh, so yeah, maybe you prefer black and white because it reminds you of some of the first movies and shows you grew fond of at the time.
Correct. I would have to say that it kind of is nostalgic to me whenever I see something in black and white. In fact, I will be drawn towards something more if it is filmed in black and white for the most part.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Like, sometimes I like to watch movies and stuff on VHS, although if I have something only on VHS, then I usually also want to transfer it to DVD to make sure it doesn't get damaged with usage. Yeah, so I do know what nostalgia is like. I can be like that too.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of films from the '80s and '70s that bring me back. Although some films in the '70s make me want to watch films from the '50s or '60s because it seems like black and white has held up, and yet films that were happened in the '70s, it seems like haven't held up as much.
Oh, interesting.
But
Uh,
going back to this film, Mr. Johnson, who was played by Jeff Daniels, he's an interesting character because he not only likes the fact that he was able to start doing things on his own, he started to realize that he liked it whenever he could do a different display every Christmas.
oh,
And so Bud found out that he was interested in art.
yeah. So Bill, Jeff Daniels' character, he starts painting, and that's what leads to something kind of bad happening later on.
Yeah, they don't like the colors that are happening. So in a sense, the people who are still in black and white and the people who are colored, they get started to be treated differently
Uh,
because they're just different and people don't understand it. So some of the teenagers that are in town, they start being a little mean to some of the people who are color, and they start chasing them down. You start seeing like Frankenstein like mobs to destroy anything that is good. They start putting a code of conduct in.
yeah.
You can only have colors that are black, white, and gray.
Yeah, like I said, that's one of the things I really like about this movie because the way they are trying to, well, the way the Pleasantville characters are implying that everything black and white is absolutely better than anything colored. It's a very good way to portray the absurdity of people giving up on who they really are in order to fit
or
in with the
people just
society.
or people just dealing with changes in general. I mean, people are afraid of change. If
Y-
you're so used to set values and you're just now realizing that those values are no longer acceptable anymore. Some people aren't ready to change and be for the better.
Phew, yeah, well, actually, that's a pretty interesting thing to think about. Like, for example, myself, I always stand for equality, for individualism. I would always encourage everyone to be themselves, to be free, and uh, usually we either see people who think this way or who would rather keep things the way they were before when everyone was kind of forced to uh, behave the way it was expected from them. But we have never seen any third mindset, anything uh, different from either of these two options. Now, if someone came up with something entirely new, with some set of values that not even I have seen before, or other people uh, uh, who stand for liberty and so on. If we suddenly discovered some entirely new set of values, I don't know how I would react to them. Like,
Well, well, it's unfortunate that our history has um, has exactly been this way. I mean, there was a point in time where people in on the other side of the world were running from persecution. They had to believe a certain way, and they didn't want to believe that way. They wanted to believe their own way. So they came over to the Americas in the 1600s. The only thing is, they brought that same persecution with them when it came to the what they would call savages of this land, the Indians.
yeah.
And look how many years that we fought the Indians because, well, they were just that different from us. And then, of course, someone thought it was a good idea to go and capture African Americans and bring them over to the Americas as slaves. you know,
Yeah, yeah, well, now about why they were fighting Indians, I don't know, was it only because they were different or also because they wanted to conquer their territory for themselves?
I actually think that they would have been accepting if we would have come at them with open arms instead of shooting right off the bat.
Huh.
If we would have come in peace, I mean, it could have been a different story.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, that makes sense. Unfortunately,
but
human history is full of violence, and
I mean, who's to say who shot the first arrow? Who shot the first bullet?
oh, well, the first arrow, I don't know, I would say it was done by the first hunters hunting animals down for food.
which was a way of survival. So you can't really fault them for that.
Well, yeah, that much is true.
And of course, the kings and queens of England. Don't you think that they might have gone on hunts for food for their own stuff? So, who is the savage if we thought of it that way?
You mean in the movie or
Who do you think was the savage in here?
oh in the history?
Well, in Pleasantville.
Oh, well, I would, in my opinion, it would be these people who are trying to force everyone to do things their own way. Like these colored people were not trying to force the black and white people to become like them, while the black and white people, well, some of them at least, were trying to force the
No,
colored
they were
people to.
no, they were just trying to live out their own lives. They were discovering new things. So more knowledge, more color.
Yeah, but I mean, these people who stayed black and white and who were trying to keep the old set of values, they were trying to they were trying to force the colored people to go back to the way they were before.
Yep, they were. And do
Yes.
you think that this was right or wrong,
I think it's wrong. Everyone should be allowed to have their own choice. Well,
or be
this
different?
yes, well, in this case, I would say it's not even a choice, it's just who you are, and it's, in my opinion, better to be true to who you are than to suppress your true nature, because if you are not true to yourself, in my opinion, it usually leads to anxiety and depression, and you cannot be much good that way either to yourself or to the others. You have to be happy with yourself first in order to be able to do good things for other people.
And I like William Macy's character in here too, because he's like the father who would come home. He expected things to be a certain way, and when they didn't go his way, he started to, you know, drift apart from his family life, and he was manipulated by the town council to be on that board of committee, um,
Yeah.
so that he could choose sides. I mean, everyone in Pleasantville who was black and white was afraid of the changes that were going on, and that's what they called them, the changes.
Yeah, and the colors, if I remember correctly.
Correct. So it did kind of get racist just a little bit.
Yes, yeah, he did. And yeah, this father character was very interesting. Like when these changes began, as you say, he was complaining about his dinner not being there, his wife not being at home, and so on. But then in the court, when David talks to him, he makes him realize that he is not only missing things being the way they are, but he actually misses his wife because he actually loves her deep down, and that's the moment when the father, I forgot what his name was,
George.
George, yeah, when he realizes that he actually loves his wife in spite of her being colored now, and actually he realizes that he likes her even better than he did before.
Oh yeah, I I like how this film came about. I guess my favorite part, my favorite scene, if I had to choose one, is when Dave brought that art book over to Bill, and the way he was looking at the book in
Oh,
admiration of the art. I think that was
yeah.
my favorite scene.
Indeed. Like I said, it's a very good way to portray what's going on in our world, just in a bit different way. Like to us, it's normal, it's socially accepted to look at art, to admire it, and so on. And
Well, it wasn't that long ago that we saw this world a little bit like this film. When I hate to say this, but when that one cop shot Dontre Hamilton,
I'm
oh,
sorry, who shot whom?
there was
I
a
don't.
cop that shot a young man by the name of Dontre Hamilton in Arrow Park
Uh,
here in Milwaukee, and
oh, that.
supposedly he was just lying on some kind of a bench in the park, and he had mental problems,
Oh
and
my.
the cop thought that he saw a gun, and when he was shot and killed, um, it was realized that he did not have a weapon.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and for a while there were riots here in Milwaukee because of that. So to me, there were some riots that came up because of it.
Well, actually, yeah. I mean, even in court, they say you're innocent until proven guilty, and in this case,
There
this.
were riots after even after they just kind of just let the cop get away with it.
Well, I would probably join the riot. I mean, if an innocent man's life was lost to this cop making a mistake, that's horrible.
Yes, it is horrible, but unfortunately, the way the guns are made these days, they are rapidly fast. If he pulled out his gun instantly, he'd probably get about 10 rounds off before he could stop shooting because of how rapid fire is. So, but anyways, let's get back to the film. Did you notice
Yeah.
any? Did you notice any music that was played? I noticed some rock and roll music.
Uh,
Uh,
uh, yeah, there was some music. It sounded pretty nice, but I don't remember the lyrics or anything. Like I said, I have seen this movie only once so far. Uh,
well, I know that while Bud and Margaret, I think her name was,
oh yeah, the girlfriend.
while they were driving towards Lover's Lane, um, Etta James was singing at last. There, that's kind of uh, a very cool love song.
Oh,
At last, my heart is going on. That was Etta James singing there. So
oh,
I noticed that, and I liked how I liked that scenery where all the petals were falling,
oh
and you
yeah.
still had the black and white still somewhat around them, and then they drove straight into the colored area of um, Lover's Lane.
Yeah, and there was even a scene when almost everything was in color except for the characters' faces. Only they were still in black and white. That was also pretty interesting to see.
And it was right after that we started to see some of the racism because when he came back from Lover's Lane, what's her name, Margaret? She was in color. So they made a comment as talking about his colored girlfriend. They were supposed to round up everyone for this big meeting
Uh,
that the townspeople were putting together.
oh, uh, yeah.
I like the way that Dave's character Bud turned color um, when his own mother was walking down the street. She was in color and she was being chased by those teenage boys.
Oh yeah. That was also a pretty interesting scene. Like these these black and white boys, they start to sexually harass the mother, which is uh, which is actually a kind of a bizarre thing to do, because like if they are harassing her because of her being different, yet the way they are doing it implies also that they want to have sex with her, which is very bizarre.
Oh yeah, that was definitely a different scene because it was in the onslaught of what could happen. Now that these normally entirely happy people in going. In fact, the leader of that gang was in fact Whitey, the one that was supposed to get those cookies
Oh,
from Margaret.
oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, David punches this guy in the face, and that's when he becomes colored, which implies that what he had been suppressing that far was, I don't know, an
Anger.
urge to, yeah, anger, an urge to fight for justice, maybe in some violent ways, which.
Maybe just humanity in general, the human part of us, and that's what makes everything colorful.
Yeah. Although I would normally say that violence is not the solution, but sometimes with some people you just cannot deal any other way.
Most definitely. So you didn't really notice much of the music. I noticed a few of the different pieces of music. The different pieces of music were definitely uh, 1950s ish kind of music. So I really enjoy older music too. So
Well,
um,
I will probably notice it when I watch the movie for a second time. But
which you probably will now that you've seen it and you have a copy of it.
yeah, I probably will. Yeah, I do like some older music myself, like Elvis Presley and so on.
or The Wanderer, or well, bless my soul, what's so wrong with me? Yeah.
I'm not familiar with that one. I'm sorry.
I'm itching like a man in a fuzzy tree. What can I do? I'm light as a bug. I'm in love. I'm all shook up. Uh-huh. That's Elvis.
Oh, well,
Uh,
I know some other ones of his songs, but I think I'm not familiar with this one.
well, after the show, look up All Shook Up by Elvis Presley.
Oh, I will, yeah. I do have some of his music on my playlist, like Can't Help Falling in Love, Love Me Tender, Indescribably
Love
Blue.
me tender, love me true.
Yeah.
or
uh,
Oh, let me be your teddy bear. I don't want to be a tiger, but that's just not enough. But, anyways.
yeah, I have some other ones of his songs on my playlist, like for example, Good Luck Charm, Burning Love. Uh,
Of course, there's always Big Bopper with Chantilly lace and a pretty face, a wiggle and a walk and a wiggle and a talk.
wow, you seem to know more of his music than I do.
Oh, you mean more of the 50s music?
Apparently, yeah.
Well, I grew up with a lot of it, and I guess I like the era of the 1950s, kind of. If I
Well,
were stuck in the middle of a 1950s soap opera like this, I wouldn't mind it. I probably wouldn't. It's just I probably don't know every single episode like Dave did.
uh, yeah, but then what would happen if you did something on your own that wasn't on the show originally?
I guess I'd have to deal with the consequences if that ever happened.
Uh,
And I know I certainly wouldn't know every single story that would be in the library.
yeah.
But in any case, did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about this film before we closed up here?
Well, I wanted to mention one scene that really impacted me quite a bit, although I have already mentioned the reasons why. But when we see Betty being colored for the first time, and then she starts, or is it Dave who applies the black and
Yeah,
white makeup on
it's,
her?
it's Dave.
Uh, yeah, so that scene does a really good job at portraying this absurdity of giving up on who you are just so that the others would like you better.
Very true. And um, he kind of reprises that moment when he's actually back at home with his own mother. And she's crying from being hurt by evidently wherever she'd gone.
Uh,
And
yeah,
so he dries her tears. And she turns to him and says, when did you get all grown up?
yeah. Although in Pleasantville, if I remember correctly, it was wasn't it Bill who wiped Betty's makeup off and said that she actually looked much more beautiful in color than in black and white. That was a part I
Well,
liked a
yeah.
lot.
In fact, I wasn't sure where they were going with that particular relationship. Maybe he just needed a muse for his art or something like that. But they could have gone the way where she could have had an affair with him, but they didn't.
Yeah, well, something unusual happened in the end, like when Dave and Jennifer already left. Like we saw Betty and there was George next to her, but then the camera moves from George to Betty and back, and then there is Bill next to her instead of George. So what was that supposed to mean?
I have no idea. But one thing that they said is, "Do you know what's going to happen?" I don't know what's going to happen. And then they laughed to each other like there was some private joke between them. So
Indeed, and
that they don't care what's going to happen next.
yeah, and well, there was another thing that kind of left me confused. Like before Dave and Jennifer entered the Pleasantville world, there already were Bud and Mary Sue, and David and Jennifer took over their places. But when they were going back to their own world, they were saying goodbye to the Pleasantville characters. Like, is it like the real Bud and Mary Sue weren't going to return, or?
Well, I know that Jennifer stayed in that world,
Oh yeah, yeah. But what about Bud? I mean,
but he went home.
after yeah, but then what happened with the Bud who was there before Dave entered that world?
He probably went.
Where did
He
he
probably came back.
go?
I guess they left it up to our imagination what happened to Bud. I guess they left it up to the imagination, if anything else.
I'm sorry, I'm having another glitch with my internet connection, just like in our
I guess
previous.
I guess they left it up to the imagination, if anything else.
Oh, well, yeah, makes sense. Uh,
Well, so you shared your favorite moments. I guess one of my other favorite moments was when Skip was over at Lover's Lane
yes.
with Mary Sue's character,
Yes.
and when she said, "Well, maybe I'll pin you," and he's like, "Ah, Mary Sue, yeah, that sounds so funny. How are you going to pin me?" Or something like that.
Y-
For some reason, his reaction was just kind of different.
uh, Indeed.
But in any case, I think that's all the time that we have for today, folks. I really enjoyed the acting on all the people involved. I liked the special effects that were in here of bringing the color back into the town of, well, not back, bringing the color into the town of Pleasantville, and the emotions and experiences that people can have with change. With drastic change. As far as that goes, and
uh,
I will always remember the role that Don Knotts played in here too, because I really enjoyed Don Knotts in almost everything that he's ever been in for the sake of being funny.
Oh, indeed. And now that you mention him, an interesting thing in the movie, we never really found out who his character was or how he knew that David and Jennifer suddenly needed a replacement for their remote.
Well, he was evidently just some guy who wanted to uh, bring into the world and give an experience. To me, it was like he finally found someone who actually knew everything there was about the show. And I don't know, it just he was just a random mad scientist guy who just knew where to be at any given point in time, at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, that
But
makes sense.
see, I like Don Knotts in The Ghost of Mr. Chicken. Um, and I
Oh,
did like his role as Barney in the Andy Griffith Show back in the day. Uh, he played alongside I think that was his in fact name, Andy Griffith.
oh, I haven't seen that. I'm sorry.
That's okay. But in any case, I think that's all the time we have for today, folks. So definitely thank you for letting us ramble on about this film. I wanted to show it to my good friend here, Boris. And
Thank you all for listening. Thank you.
uh, basically, we just watch it separately and go on about our own thoughts. So it was definitely a unique conversation. So hopefully you enjoyed our discussion, and hopefully you will enjoy our future discussions too. I actually don't
Yeah,
think I actually don't think that our audio and video wasn't that bad this time. It may have screwed up maybe once.
yeah, I think it was pretty good this time. So, yeah, once again, thank you all for listening, and I hope you enjoyed our conversation.
Definitely. Next week we are going to go on about a movie called The Hike. It was filmed about 5 years ago. I saw it around the same time that I originally saw Holy Hell, which I went on about
Oh,
with my friend Boris here. I introduced him to that. Well, it was at the same festival that film was at. It didn't win anything. So
oh,
at least at that
well, that's
festival.
going to be, yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, prepare for the hike next week as we go on about that particular independent film. So,
Yeah,
stay tuned for more enlightened discussions, and just go out and see these movies if you can. I know that some of them are available, some of them are not. This next one is actually only available to rent or buy on a specific downloading site, which I'll have to figure out where that is so that you can find it for yourself.
oh, yeah.
So, in any case, enjoy your evening or morning wherever you are. Appreciate your time spent here on our page. Enjoy yourselves.
Yeah, see you everyone.